get started, if you came here for this signing, if you could make your way to the front of the store.
And not block the register.
I got it.
This
Ben
is
Findle
Nicholas
is in the house.
Benton, activist, publisher, and contributing author to Smash the Church, Smash the State. He agreed to come and talk with us about his chapter and share a little bit of his history. He's brought a few artifacts that I'll let him tell us about, and copies of his newspaper, in case you want to grab that on your way out. A little bit about the way we operate. Our registers are loud. We will not ring while you're speaking from the book, reading from the book rather.
Even when I'm like talking about how they can make a lot of money and then I can't get you to go.
Nothing might start up.
Get the cash.
But if you do hear it, we ask for you to just keep your attention this way and apologize in advance for that. So.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much for having me. If you don't mind, I'm going to continue to sit. I've got bum knees, as some of you know. But I'm very pleased to be here and very pleased to talk about this book and answer any questions you have about it, because this is really about not my contribution to the book, but the entire book. And it's a fantastic product. It's already been nominated for American Library Association Awards. It's a compilation of contributions from people who were there back in the day, 40 years ago, and including myself in the San Francisco Bay Area. But there are contributions from people in London, New York, small town Iowa, different places. And the editor, Tommy Mecca, did a really incredibly good job piecing together the elements that are contained in this book. And and there's a certain value. I mean, there's been lots of anthologies that have been put together about gay liberation in the early days and so on and so forth, put together mostly around that time, or written, or a compilation of works that were published that were written from that time. And really what sets this book apart is that these are essays and contributions of people writing, within the past year, as is mine. It's like with the benefit of, I hate to say it, 40 years, ow, of hindsight, right? But with that hindsight and looking at the world today, looking at the issues that face the LGBT community today, to actually get that as a point of view to look back at what happened then and compare and contrast, okay? So what I would say about it is that I will just read the very opening of the introduction by Tommy, who's in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is put together by City Lights Bookstore. If you're not familiar with it, it's like the old beatnik, The Berkeley Gay Liberation Front Statement of Purpose includes this couple sentences. We are a revolutionary group of men and women formed with the realization that complete sexual liberation for all people cannot come about unless existing social institutions are abolished. We reject society's attempt to impose sexual roles and definitions on our nature. Okay, welcome to the Gay Liberation Front, 1969, 1970, 1971. I can read you from page 165 in this book, which is among the essays that I think are the most important for the book, about an editorial in the one of the very, if not the first issue of Come Out, which was a newspaper that was produced in 1969, 1970, right after the Stonewall riots. And I don't know if you are familiar with the circumstances of the Stonewall riots in New York City, that you're aware of the fact that they happened in response to in June of 1969, 40 years ago, in the context of a rather routine police raid of a gay bar in Greenwich Village. However, earlier that day, the funeral for Judy Garland had taken place. So everybody was in a very, very agitated frame of mind, knowing, Judy Garland's connection to gay culture and so forth. Nobody was in the mood to be kicked around. And so when the police raided the bar that night, they got more than they bargained for, and it led to 3 or 4 days of successive, like, pitched battles in the streets of Greenwich Village that ultimately wound up becoming the defining moment for the emergence of the gay liberation movement, modern gay liberation movement. What separated the modern gay liberation movement is what that first comment made reference to, that this one will as well, and others, including some that I wrote, and that is, up until that point, the whole point of gay people getting together and demonstrating and picketing and so forth, to the extent it was done, which was very little, groups by like the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Politis and so forth, was with the hope that at some point society will accept gay people, okay, allow them to exist. Gay liberation came and just blew onto the scene and basically said, screw all that, we're not asking to be accepted by anybody. We're defining our lives from our own point of view, and, you know, society has got to change to accept us, you know, kind of thing, that notion. Very much, and of course, as I write in my contribution to this book, being in Berkeley in 1969, 1970, actually starting in 1968, as I say, the year leading up to Stonewall, the assassination of Martin Luther King, of Bobby Kennedy, the social ferment that was going on around the Democratic National Convention in 1968, when there were these great police riots against demonstrators at the Democratic National Convention, and the anti-war ferment, the civil rights ferment that was going on. This was the context in which, you know, more than just Judy Garland's funeral, this whole thing blew up, right? And so it was very much in concert with a much radicalized mentality that existed. And so the editorial in Come Out basically says, on November 14th, 1969, concludes by saying, we are going to transform the society at large through the open realization of our own consciousness. All right? So we're out to transform society. We're not just out to gain acceptance. Okay? And that was the context in which I more or less entered the scene, as I said, in the context of the social ferment of the late 1960s, and participated in the summer of 1970 in the formation of the first Bay Area gay liberation newspaper called Gay Sunshine. And in fact, I wrote the first editorial for that newspaper, for the very first edition of it. And the editorial was entitled in August 1970, Who Needs It? Right? And I'll read what I wrote in this paragraph here. It sounded what was my signature theme at the time, that indeed gay liberation was part of the larger struggle of human beings for liberation, in solidarity with the civil rights, anti-war, feminist, and third world liberation struggles. Gay Sunshine will represent, in this first editorial, those who understand themselves as oppressed, politically oppressed by an oppressor that is not only is down on homosexuality, but equally down on all things not white, straight, middle-class, pro-establishment. It should hearken to a greater cause, the cause of human liberation, of which homosexual liberation is just one aspect, and on that level take its stand. Right? Then I wrote, a little more, racy perspectives on this a little later on, when in October, in the Gay Sunshine, I wrote, sex between persons of the same sex is the cultural antithesis of the most fundamental proposition of the whole Western capitalistic mentality, which is derived from one fundamental act, the missionary position, male atop female, sexual intercourse. Okay? That's the level in which this was like being discussed, right? The missionary position, penis and vagina for the explicit purpose of creating of offspring, is the first presupposition of everything Western culture represents. From it are derived the concepts of purposeful existence, patriarchy, capitalism, nationalism, imperialism, fascism. From it come the thought patterns of active-passive